Welcome to BIZPAC. This is kind of a hybrid. BIZPAC typically has 3 types of meetings per month. We have a roundtable closed door with an elected official, like we've done with Mr. Kubosh, our city councilman. And we call that a little strategy session where we get some information and we gather information, we decide what to do going forward to try to get something done at the city, at the county, at the state. And then we have another type of meeting called a Meet the Candidate interview. Typically, we do those at a different location with a lot more seats and kind of a nice white glove lunch, whatever, but nobody during the holiday wanted to drive down all the way past the Astrodome, so we're doing it here to make it easier on folks, and look what happened. Nobody RSVP'd and we're overflow. So that's not a bad problem. I know everybody wanted to meet Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. So thank you all for coming. I know it's a short week. We're going to make this worth your while. We've got a few announcements to kick off. If you are new to BIZPAC, if you've never been around or you're not quite sure what we do, we are a group of business owners, an association. We set a legislative agenda at the municipal, state, and federal level that's business friendly, fair play, lower taxes. In fact, we'd like to get rid of property tax. I mean, these are things that we've talked about on and off for years and been working in the legislature. Then we start working with the elected and appointed officials to get that business agenda done. Many of us contribute to their campaigns or help out with their campaigns to help them get elected. And then if we're not happy with the results, many of us help to get them unelected and contribute to other campaigns, all right? So some of us have been doing this for a couple of years with BIZPAC. But that kind of gives you an idea of what we do. And you can take a look. We've got a decent track record at the state capitol, which we'll get into in a little bit. But let me do something before some of them have to leave. We have quite a few folks in the room that are either an elected official or running for office. So I'm going to go left to right. And if you're an elected official, tell us what your office is. If you're running for office, tell us, starting sweeping around here. I know, Roland, please tell us what you're running for and give us a sentence or two about your campaign.
Roland Mulpus. I'm running for congressional seat 38, one of the new carve-outs. Just a high level. I'm originally from McAllen, 4th generation Texan. I'm pretty much, my campaign is going to be premised on taking the rights of a voter back to the person that actually serves rather than the other way around. I mean, a lot of times I think we've seen where we've migrated and we've gone back to that old school monarchy. George Washington once said, he had the opportunity to serve over and over again. He said, wait, stop. We left that. We formed a new country to get away from that. And that's what I want to do. I actually want to serve my constituents.
Awesome. He's got a lot of momentum in his campaign. Mr. Kubosh.
I'm Randy Kubosh.
Yeah.
I'm running for Harris County Judge, and
Thank God.
I'm running as a true Republican.
Thank you.
Randy Kubosh does not contribute to or vote for Democrats. 2 of the candidates that are running for Harris County Judge have already admitted in a forum that they have contributed to Democratic candidates.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, Randy. Thank you. City Councilman at Large, Michael Kubosh. Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm Randy's brother, and I told him, I said, when you get involved in this politics, you're going to find that it's not only a swamp, but he and I used to go out and hunt for swamp rabbits. And sometimes when we're out in the swamp, you never know how deep the swamp is. And I said, you're going to find that this swamp is real deep. And all these special interest groups, I told him, look, there's 5 branches of government. There's the judicial, executive, legislative, there's the bureaucratic branch, and there's the special interest. And this swamp is deep, and you're going to watch your emotions go up and down. Don't be discouraged. All this pay for play, I said, don't give anybody any money for any votes. Don't do it. It just isn't proper. God bless y'all, and I'm fighting for you at City Hall.
Thank you. Thank you. If you haven't watched Michael Kubosh slap around City Hall, you are really missing a good show. I mean, did you like WWF when you were a kid? This is what it's like. And he's sucker punch questions continually outing them. It's hilarious. I say, who else is running for office or is sitting in office as we go around? I don't think anybody else is here yet. Okay, that's fine. And then, of course, you know who Lieutenant Colonel Alan West is. You're going to hear a lot from him in a minute. We're grateful that you're here. We're going to have a great discussion. We've got a few little housekeeping things before we get into the interview and discussion with Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. We've covered that. I do want to mention one of our long-term friends, a very close friend of mine, lost his daughter late Friday night. Y'all know Ronnie Holly. If you know him, I'm sorry to be the one to break the news to you if you don't know. His daughter was in an Uber, hit from behind by an 18-wheeler on 59. It destroyed the car, killing everyone in it. And so if you guys don't mind, before we have our meal, I'm going to go ahead and say grace. You can join if you'd like. And just join me in prayer. Lord, we thank you for this time. We ask you for our guidance and wisdom. We earnestly seek for depth of character in all of our actions, integrity in our deeds. We ask that you comfort the Holly family, especially Ronnie, and the loss of his daughter, Misty. We pray this in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Moving on to the next thing here. Let's see. Oh yeah, Mark Golaby's here. This is great. This is great. I'm gonna hit this slide for you.
Okay.
But I'm gonna let you kind of take it from here. If you guys don't know, Mark he's legislative director for BIZPAC, and he's done a phenomenal job in other areas before he agreed to come on and be associated with me.
Okay.
There we go. This is what I wanted to get to.
Okay.
So we first had the endorsements. Yeah.
All right.
Joe, can I talk about that?
Hold on.
All right. All right. Well, let's see. So we had a very good, outstanding turnout for the Cy-Fair School District, and we're able to go through there and wipe out all the incumbents there.
That's absolutely fantastic.
Some of them were quite surprised. When we get together again, what if any of the old board people show up. But that was a good race. In Klein, we weren't quite as successful as we had hoped to be, but we are getting with them as far as my active action group to get on what they need to be doing. One of the things that we were able to accomplish in Cy-Fair was we had Bill Ellie had a great grassroots game, okay? But then we've been attacking the board from the other side, okay, of exposing over and over and over again, what the board was up to, the kind of policies they were putting in place, and the procedures they were doing. So that combination, and I think when we do that in Klein, we'll have the same results in this it may come up next year, all right? And so I think we'll be able to come again and do that same pierce and catch them both. In Houston ISD, we were successful in getting a lot of our candidates into runoff positions. So
That's right.
I think that is
In fact,
impressive when you consider, again, you're coming against incumbents, and incumbents are very tough to get rid of.
Forcing a runoff against incumbents is no small task. The only one in this picture that did not force a runoff is Jerry, and that's a shame.
And no,
But
there was fraud in that race.
that's its own battle that'll get fought, and but if you haven't met Caroline, Bridget, or Kendall, you need to meet them. If they represent your district, the HISD is broken up into districts. So I've got 3 new crushes, in fact, because they're all like angry mama bears, up there. In Kendall Baker, he's been advocate of children and education and just trying to do the right thing for so long, and he's finally got the runoff going. I'm happy for him. But if you haven't met these folks, do you know where they can meet them next? The next opportunity, because there's a speaking event here on the Monday after the holiday, I think. I can't remember what it is. We'll get it up on BIZPAC for you.
BIZPAC let you know, because no, I don't know. And like I say, Kendall's been a champion. He's been working in the Republican Party for quite a while.
Yeah.
Even ran to be our county chair. So I mean, he's not just, hey, let me show up and see what I
Right.
can stir and then leave. Okay. He's been involved in the process for quite a while. Bridget's got an excellent plan for HISD.
She sure does.
She has put together a very well thought out way to restructure HISD and come up with a better way to manage it and administer it. It's a humongous behemoth of a thing, and it's just gotten out of control. A lot of fiefdoms, a lot of silos, and a lot of interfighting. So
She took HISD apart in her analysis like a venture capitalist.
Yeah.
And when you talk to her, it sounds like she's going to restructure this thing, pull the blanket out, shake it, get rid of the rats. I love hearing her plan. It's great detail she's gone through. Yeah. So if you haven't got to meet her, you need to meet her, and one day I hope that she ends up chairing that thing. But anyway, if you look, here's the runoffs that we've got up here. You can see the ones that are runoffs, and that is the 11th or 12th?
It's 11.
The 11th? 11th. It'll all be on the BIZPAC.us website. If you want to learn more about Mark Goloby and some of the work that he did to end the very corrupt Chapter 313 that school boards for 22 years all across the United States, all across Texas, were using, a guy moves into the school district, immediately hangs his hat out that he wants to run for school board. He's got 100,000 or more in his campaign war chest for school board. Big companies were donating to have their hired gun there to give that company a tax deferral tax abatement under Chapter 313. Guess who paid for that? You and me, taxpayers. And then guess what else happened? Where did the tax burden go in that community? It went to the homeowners and the small business owners. So it took a lot. You fought it out for years, right? I remember our first discussion about it. I didn't even want to hear it. It was too complex. It was too complex. But once I finally got my head wrapped around what Mark had discovered, and then we got all of the angry moms involved. I love angry moms, because their kids are in school and they're home doing homework and they're calling each other, and they're the ones that outed all these politicians and mapped their career path from the school board to rhinos in our state house or representative senate. They mapped it all for us, and then when we had it, we made sure that everyone in the Capitol that was elected knew that we weren't going to put up with it, and they defunded it. Thank God. Thank you, Mark. Now, Mark will tell you there were a lot of other people, but he's the only one I heard. Let's see, moving on.
God's greatest sand. God's greatest sand.
Let's see, I'm going to move quickly. What time are we at? I want to make sure we stay on time. Everybody order yet? Okay, good. Good deal. So I'm going to introduce you to Barry Kochu for just a moment. My good friend, business partner, a gentleman that I've gotten to know very well over the last 2 years. And he runs, and he started and he runs Wellness Biosciences RX. If you'll take just 2 minutes, let them know what the company does, where you're headed, where you're expanding to, and why you got involved with BIZPAC.
Sure. Thank you, Joseph. Well, first of all, I just want to say that the organization that BIZPAC has created has been a phenomenal support, with respect to our business model and real legislation that's moved the needle. We're a marketing and distribution company of wellness-based products. Anything that assists or helps nourish our endocannabinoid system, which is a fancy way of saying how your body moderates itself and keeps balance. And we're spearheading it with medical grade CBD. And we've learned now through studies, most of them in Israel and in Europe, what can really be done to help people in many different ways. Maybe some of you understand and know that if you go to a medical doctor to get help with anxiety or pain or sleeplessness, you're going to get a prescription of a drug that in most cases will not be in your best interest long term as an entry level prescription, right? So what we're doing is working with medical professionals to offer an alternative to give people an opportunity to not get, hooked to a pain reliever or an opiate or a sleep med that they don't yet need. Maybe they do. If they do, then by all means, we're not anti-pharmaceutical. We just believe that there's a means and a way of doing things differently. And that's been well embraced by medical professionals, really all over the United States. We've done it before with high-end nutrition. We're doing it now here. And what's most important, I think, with what we've accomplished through the efforts BIZPAC has made is legislation has changed its position with how they see our product. They've changed their position with what they recognize are the real medical needs that it helps support. And that has really been a huge value to us. Already, example, we've been able to see the legislation move 0.3 availability of THC to 1%. Now, we're not advocates of people running around and getting recreationally high. That's up to them. But what we are advocates of is giving medical doctors an opportunity to microdose various compounds that are in their best interest. And that has been of tremendous value to the consumer. The quality control that now, I believe as of December 1st, requiring a certificate of analysis is going to minimize some of the junk that is out there in the market, and that's a huge value to the consumer. But we just see tremendous value across the board with what's going on, and we're highly appreciative. So, anyway.
Oh, thank you, Barry.
Yeah.
So to give you an idea of that, Dr. Elias Jackson, a lot of you know him. He's running late. He just sent me a message. Won't be here till 12:30. So I'll kind of fill in the. Normally he would kind of hand off, and Dr. Jackson would fill in the blank. So Dr. Jackson and I were up at the Capitol 20-something times during this legislative cycle. We were there before that. Oh, there's Dr. Jackson now.
There he is. As you speak, he walks in.
Isn't it great? There's Dr. Jackson now. Well, now he shows up. We were just talking about you. So do you mind, since you're standing, and I know you just walked in and everything, but do you mind kind of letting the folks know what you were working on up at the Capitol, what you feel we got done, and then you and I together will kind of cover the time frame of implementation of kind of how those things work.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. Well, my name is Dr. Elias Jackson. I'm Director of Government Affairs at Veriform Biopharmaceuticals. We're a biopharmaceutical firm in the Texas Medical Center Innovation Institute. We were started 9 years ago. I'm a former medical school professor, graduate of UT, trained at Yale University. So it's okay, but it's not better than UT. So to give you an idea of what we're doing, we're trying to usher in regulation for the marijuana industry. We see great promise in the industry, but currently it's kind of like a quasi-drug program. Our goal is to actually open it up to whereas businesses can come in and have the assurance that these products are actually safe. So how I got into this area, I'm a former cancer drug developer with Ilex Oncology before it was bought out by Genzyme. From there, I went on, as I said, I taught medical school. But my son was diagnosed in the spectrum of autism, and for any parent being faced with the huge paperwork of evaluations that says your child cannot succeed in life, he will not be able to learn. I mean, it's a very scary experience. My family is from Lee County, Texas. They were farmers. They did cotton. So my family is a bunch of strong men who believe in working very hard. So when I was faced with that, my wife, who was a pediatrician, we decided not to put him on the opioids that was given to us by his school district while we were at Yale. It was an entire list of opioids that they approved for children with ADHD or autism or some sort of neurological disease, and we decided not to. And it was from there I began looking at other alternatives from teaching methods as well as pharmacological methods. And what I found was that cannabis held a promise, but all the research was anecdotal. It wasn't up to the standards that I was used to as a former cancer drug developer. So from that point, I began to develop technology, and I was awarded, well, let's say the company was awarded the first foundational patents for the evaluation of cannabinoid-based products for human consumption. Basically what I saw was that these guys were giving out an active pharmaceutical ingredient, but they didn't understand how to truly evaluate. In other words, if I bought Tylenol right around the corner from here and bought it in DC, we all know it's the same, right? But in the case of this cannabinoids, they don't really know. You know, you may have a bud tender or someone giving you out a drug, but you don't know what's in it, you don't know what's been treated, you don't know what harmful chemicals. And it was also found that some of these chemicals give strange forms of cyanide when they're ignited. So from that point, we began to develop these programs and these processes. But Beer Farm is not just focused on cannabinoids. That was kind of a low-hanging fruit. Any of you who are in business, you know when you go through the valley of death as a young startup, you know, you're searching for funding, right? So we saw that as a low-hanging fruit because we knew these guys didn't understand true drug development. Since then, we've successfully, we were able to raise a historical amount, well over the $300 million mark this past summer. And we were very excited about doing that. But, excuse me, to tell you a little bit more, Beer Farm is actually a biopharmaceutical personalized drug development company. We have 11 drugs in our pipeline. They are not cannabis drugs. We also have personalized diagnostic platforms, which allows us to target specific receptors in your body. So the problem in cancer treatment is that, you know, chemo, it may kill the cancer, but it's killing everything else.
Yeah.
So what you have is a very bad quality of life. Right. So our goal was to try to develop drugs that we could actually target the cancer cell. Therefore, your family's screaming, oh, cannabis is great, it's wonderful, but you don't know if it's actually working. So our goal was to try to figure out how can we tell if a patient is actually responding to the drug. And to that end, we have diagnostic platforms. We have molecular platforms, small molecules, that allow us to image that receptor as it's responding to the drug treatment. So here in Texas, I won't take too much more time, but in Texas, what we've done is we're moving to initiate a certification program for the compassionate use program here in Texas. Currently, the program is an oral-based program, and it has been successful with several patients in the area. But the problem is long-term use. How does it affect these patients? Can we get it back? So, working with BIZPAC and the members of BIZPAC, once again, I thank you so much. It's been a joy working with you, Joe.
You're not breaking up with me, are you?
He's not as bad as but again, that's what we're doing. And on the federal level, met with Senators Booker, White, and Schumer. Also met with several senators, Senator Mace, who recently just initiated a bill for the regulation of cannabinoids. And we will be talking to her again later on this week. So again, thank you very much. I'm sorry I'm late. I usually yell at my students for being late. So feel free, you can
Well, Dr. Jackson, if you don't mind, if you look on the screen behind us, you're going to see what comes off a ledge scan. You're familiar with this too. Up at the Capitol, Texas Capitol, when we're working with a company, all the interested members of BIZPAC go to the Capitol. We're up there weekly. I mean, you must have made 25 trips. I know I did. And so we're using these tools to track our bills and see what's happening, where they're moving, whose committee it's sitting in on, and who all on the committees we need to have meetings with. And so let me just give you an idea. On one of the bills that Dr. Jackson and I worked on together, and you can see the kind of credibility he brings to it from his company, from his background, from his training, from all the successes from the Texas Medical Center. Can you imagine when you sit down with a legislator, right? That's how many legislators signed up for this bill after they met Dr. Jackson. Okay? And I've tried to take credit for it, but they won't let me.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. So that kind of give you an idea of when we go to the Capitol, how it works. We're constantly in meetings. It's about educating their staff, educating the legislator. Then they come back and they ask for help in the words on the bills, amendments to the bills. And so you got to kind of learn to work that whole system, right? Unless you're trying to kill a bill, right? You got to learn to work that whole system. So let's see. I think what we ought to do now is move to Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. Came in all the way from Dallas, right? He drove all the way down here today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tee this up with a little background info, that little homework that BIZPAC has done for you. And then we're going to ask Colonel West to speak for just a few minutes of self-introduction for 5 minutes or whatever you feel. And then we'll go through the BIZPAC agenda items, which are initiatives that we have in play right now in the Texas legislature and have had in play. And we'll just kind of go down that road. As you can see, there's a few candidates for governor that are declared right now.
You misspelled Francis.
I misspelled who?
Francis. Robert Francis.
Okay. I don't know. Oh, Beto? Yeah. Beto. Robert Beto O'Rourke. Okay. All right. So those are some of the guys that he's up against right now, and you can see the Republicans that are declared. There's a little bit of background biography data that you can easily get. He's well known. He was served in the U.S. Congress out of Florida for a term over there, so a lot of people got to know him. But even before that, I think he made national news when he told the president what he could do with his social plan or something similar to that, right?
Socialist agenda.
You can clean this up. But so you can see how he fought it out right here in the election cycles that he was in there in Florida, right? All this is on the bizpac.us website. To get an idea of kind of his voting record, there are tools on the BIZPAC website. You can find out where the money came from for any candidate. You can find out what their voting patterns are like, what their bill sponsorship or co-sponsorship patterns are like. Just go get that stuff. Like if you look down there in the bottom right corner, it says Rep. Allen West, and it says he's got like a 70% rating for Republican, as a congressman. But the average for a House Republican is 66. So that tells you that he blew the curve. Now, you always want to track and see where the money came from for a candidate on any election cycle they've been through. If you look at Colonel West, of the $25 million that he is responsible for raising according to followthemoney.org, and it's fairly accurate, but nearly half of it was totally grassroots. You look at other candidates and you look at the categories, it's going to be industrial, real estate development, oil and refining, energy, you see what I'm saying, or big medical pharma. But if you look at the other categories, they're flat. He had great grassroots support over there in Florida, right? So that means the people got behind him and donated 100, 1,000, whatever, and enough of them did it to be half the money that he had raised. So it was pretty impressive. Pulled it together well. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Lieutenant Colonel Allen West to clean up everything I just said.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Joe, for having me here. And thanks to each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with me today. I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. I grew up in the same neighborhood that produced Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the old Fourth Ward neighborhood. I went to the original UT, Doctor, the University of Tennessee, and I think there's a great relationship between Tennessee and Texas. We have that very unique nickname, of course. And on 31 July 1982, I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the United States Army Field Artillery. I served 22 years, active duty, United States Army. That's kind of like our family business. My father was a corporal in the United States Army, served in World War II. My older brother was a lance corporal in the United States Marines, infantryman. He was wounded in Khe Sanh, served in Vietnam. My nephew is right now serving in the United States Army as a lieutenant colonel, awaiting to come out on the battalion command list. Been married for 32 years. My wife, she's the real brain trust. She has an MBA and a PhD. She's a wealth management advisor with LPL. She has been with Raymond James and also with Oppenheimer. We live up in Garland, Texas. We have two daughters, 28 and 24, both married. The youngest, we just had our first grandson 6 months ago, and they're in the Dallas area as well. Like I said, I served a term in the United States Congress, and I would have never thought that I would be in the political realm, but someone challenged me to say that even after retiring, that your oath to serve the Constitution does not have a statute of limitations. And in the last redistricting cycle, I know that some people had talked about the voting record and whether or not you're a strong enough Republican. It was the Republicans in the state of Florida who had a supermajority in the House, the Senate, and Rick Scott was the governor, that redistricted me out of the congressional district that I had. And I was also the #1 target for the Democrat Party in 2012. George Soros put in $5 million. Nancy Pelosi put in $3 million. There was an organization that came out of San Francisco called PAC that ran a shadow campaign. And I was wondering, why would a young freshman member of the United States House of Representatives who had never been in politics before create such a hoopla? Because I believe in owning up to my oath to the Constitution, not to a political party, not to a person. And that's always what I sought to do, and also to serve the constituents there. I got the opportunity to come back here to Texas in 2014. I retired out of Fort Hood, Texas in 2004 to work with some conservative policy centers. We enjoy being here. And of course, as you know, I was recently the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. And so people will say, well, why would you step down to run for governor? Because when you look at the situation that is going on here in Texas, Texas is at the tip of the spear. Texas is at the front line. And if you were not paying attention last night, 60 Minutes did a very special segment on Austin, Texas. And they were talking about how Austin is the example of how we should reimagine police in the United States of America. But what you have to realize is that the left understands they will never be able to control the United States of America until they control Texas. And if you look at our major urban population centers, they're doing a very good job, especially when you look at Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio, you go out to El Paso. And that is their modus operandi. But to think about the fact that they were praising the defunding of the police in Austin, when you have seen a 66% increase in violent crime, 71% increase in homicides. They even talked about how it's a good thing that they're sending out social workers instead of police officers to make these calls. That's not what we want. If you talk about small business and BIZPAC, just go down to 6th Street and look at all the small businesses that have closed up. Look at the businesses that no longer are viable because people don't want to go into downtown Austin because of the safety and security. The other thing so important, Dallas and Houston, top 2 cities in the United States of America for sex trafficking. Texas is the #1 state in the United States of America for human and sex trafficking. We just recently found out, doctor, that we have hit over 100,000 people have died of drug overdoses. And that's because of an open, porous border where the cartels, which are actually transnational narco-criminal terrorist organizations, are flowing fentanyl, methamphetamine, marijuana across our border. We've got to stop that. When you also look at the public health crisis that we have, it's very interesting that we are telling individuals they don't have medical freedom, but yet the people coming across our border, hundreds of thousands every month, that they don't have to get a jab in their arm. So medical freedom is very important. I was just out in Alpine, Texas last week, and everyone is focusing on Del Rio, Val Verde County, and everything east. But when you go out and you talk to the Border Patrol, you talk to the sheriffs, you talk to the small business owners, you talk to the ranchers out there in West Texas, in the Big Bend sector, it's wide open. And that is where the dangerous element of illegal immigration is coming across. The people with the non-uniform, black attire, camouflage attire, military-aged males carrying backpacks. And the drugs that they're getting, the things that they're picking up out there are horrendous. So we have got to do something about our border. I'll close on this. I would have never thought, I'm 60 years of age, that I would see such a constitutional crisis as what we see in the United States of America. Number one, when we have people where their individual liberties and freedoms are being challenged. Number two, when we have the government in competition with small businesses, where the government is paying people to stay at home and to not work, which is forcing our small businesses into a horrible situation. Number three, when we have a government, a Biden administration, that has abdicated their constitutional duty and responsibility to protect the sovereignty of the United States of America, the sovereignty of a state that has an over 1,200-mile border with a failed state, which is Mexico. We've got to step up, and we have to have courageous, principled, conservative leadership in order to protect Texas, to protect you. And that's what I seek to do as your next governor. So God bless you all, and I'm ready for your questions.
Awesome. Awesome. So we're gonna go back and talk about some of our agenda items here real quick. Okay, here we are. Number one item that I'm not seeing addressed by our current governor is election integrity. And not only the integrity of the election itself, but forensic audit for those that have been already ordered by our State Attorney General Ken Paxton in 4 counties in Texas where demonstrable irregularities, I'm putting it lightly,
Yes.
have shown up. And the basically, our current governor descheduled it in the legislature.
Yeah.
Even taking retribution on members of the legislature that had bills that helped their district passed that should have been signed into law. He vetoed them.
Yeah.
He vetoed, like, remember the dog bill that was vetoed to help out the district over here in the Houston area that was vetoed? That was the reason for it, because it was legislation that was forwarded after he had given his edict. He didn't want to see any election, real election integrity and that type of thing. So tell us, as governor, how you see this playing out and how it should be handled. Is forensic audit automatic? Is real sweeping reform and election integrity with re-registration of voters and cleanup of the rolls? Tell us where you're at on those subjects.
Well, absolutely. That has to happen. If you go back to my election in 2012, I have a very personal confrontation with voter fraud. I used to jump out of airplanes in the military, so that kind of lets you know about my competency or intelligence. But I know that you cannot have 108% voter turnout in a precinct. But that's exactly what happened in St. Lucie County. You know, this is the thing. First and foremost, there has to be consequences. And when you look at SB 1 that the governor signed into law, on pages 72 to 73, we took voter fraud from being a felony here in the state of Texas down to being a Class A misdemeanor. And of course, the governor came back and said he did not realize that was in the bill. Well, why do we have a person that is signing something in the law, and obviously he did not read it? The other thing is that when you look at a person, we talk about consequences. Chris Hollins, who is the county clerk appointed by Lena Hidalgo here in Harris County, should be in jail. He clearly violated Texas election law. So the thing is that you can have all these laws in the books, but if you don't hold people accountable, if you're lessening the penalties for the laws to make them misdemeanors, you're just rewarding the bad behavior. You're participating in a very large Pavlovian experiment. So we do need to make sure that we have outside third-party audits of our electoral systems here in the state of Texas, because again, this state is so important. I don't know how many people here have read H.R. 1, which is that election law at the federal government level election bill that has passed the United States House of Representatives. One of the things that they have is no voter registration roll review. And so as governor, I think that we need to make sure that our counties, who are the repository, need to be doing that voter registration roll review, and we need to make sure that there are penalties if they don't do it. And we have got to have those type of audit systems, spot audit systems, not just after an election, but always checking to make sure that they're doing what is right. H.R. 1 is very dangerous. No picture ID to vote, no voter registration roll review. The fact that they want to move toward mail-in ballots being the standard, there's a difference between absentee ballots and mail-in ballots. When you're in the military, that's what an absentee ballot is. It's a control item that you have to request to have sent back to you. If we go to mail-in ballots, think about this. A couple of months ago in Houston, you had 90 illegal immigrants in a stash house. What happens if 90 ballots get mailed out to a stash house if we're not cleaning up what is happening on the border and we see what is going on there? And remember, Chris Hollins was going to mail out 2.7 million unsolicited ballots here in Harris County. President Trump only won by 620,000 in the state of Texas. So we have got to clean up that system. Progressive socialism, as you know, I think it was Mr. Stalin once said, it's not the person that casts the ballot that matters. It's the person that counts the ballot that matters. And that's what we have to pay attention to.
Absolutely correct. So to kind of tie up some of that a little bit, the Texas State Attorney General, Ken Paxton, we had him in for an interview a couple weeks ago, and he told us he would like nothing more than to dig into these 4 counties, but he can't. Because of the way that our state constitution, state laws are written, the Texas State Attorney General cannot go dig into a county matter until there's a crime, or the governor orders him to, or the Texas legislature mandates it, you know, the representatives of the people. And that has not been done. And you have to ask, why has that not been done? And every legislator that I've spoken with, and if you guys hang around me, you know I've talked to a lot of them. They've told me they were warned to stand down and not to buck the governor on it. That's the truth. That's the truth of the matter. So we'll move on to the next issue. If I haven't upset you enough, we'll talk about taxes. Property taxes is this ugly game that's been played in Texas that's been ever increasing let me just put it this way. I owned a house in Memorial and I paid a teacher's salary in taxes for that thing. And it was pathetic. It was more than my house note. And now it's even worse than it was, right? And the story we keep hearing is, we're going to give you property tax relief. Now, I'm going to ask everyone in this room, do you know who the #1 Texas state rep or senator that is constantly saying, I'm giving you property tax relief? I got you some property tax relief. You know the answer. Who is it? Okay. Who owns the largest, most successful property tax consulting firm in the region? Do you really think? Do I need to finish this? All right. So when you see me weighing in a public forum with him, right? Change your property tax consulting firm to a retail tax consulting firm and I'll believe you, right? It's because the fix is in. So property tax has been absolutely abused, putting the insanity of, I'm going to have a school board that should be focused on the quality of education and care for our children, the ones we love. But we also want you to have taxing authority as well. So you can create money for your budget. All right, now who came up with that? You got to think about that whole system. So BIZPAC has an initiative to eliminate property tax, move to consumption tax, and capture lots of taxable revenues and get it off of the backs of the homeowners, because it's immoral for any entity to make you rent your property from it every year. But how do you feel about that?
Well, the great thing is that Joe and we had an opportunity to sit down and chat previously in a small little round table, and you heard my perspective on this issue. So I'm not just saying this to appease the people that are here. When you look at what is going on with our property tax, and you're right, when you tell people that we've given you $175 of property tax relief, that's condescending. That is offensive, but that is what came out of this last special session. So when you read the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and you read the planks there of communism or the socialist economic model, two things that apply to the 6 highest property taxes that we have in the United States of America. That's here in Texas. Number one, Karl Marx believed in a progressive tax system. And that's exactly what we have here with our property tax system. You just talked about how it continues to go up, go up, go up, go up. And that's what we have had ever since we introduced the income tax system here. The second thing is that Karl Marx believed in the elimination of private property rights. And so again, that's exactly what you have here with our property tax system. You can pay off your land, you can pay off your mortgage, but you will never own your home. So these are the two things that I want to do. There are two avenues of approach that we have to go at. First and foremost, government here in the state of Texas, just the same as up in Washington, D.C., has become a self-licking ice cream cone. And what we need to do is we have to look at, feel free to use it. But what they continue to do is they continue to raise money to perpetually feed their own insatiable appetite of spending. So one of the things we need to do is look at the budget surpluses that we have, and we need to codify it in the law that 70, 80, maybe 90% of those budget surpluses will go to paying down the maintenance and operations fees for the independent school districts, which is what we have at the state level. But also what we need to do, I served in 2016 on the Texas Sunset Advisory Commission. We need to go back over the last 15 to 20 years of the Sunset Advisory Commissions and look at the recommendations. Have we actually sunsetted any of these government agencies and programs that have been recommended to the legislature? And I will tell you, you probably know, probably not.
Very few.
And very few.
313 is one of the only ones.
313, but 313 has not been killed. It could still be brought back in the legislature.
They could bring it back.
Absolutely. So we need to officially kill
Well, I'll shake it. I'll shake them over a cliff.
Yeah. But the thing is that we need to look at those savings that we can have with these agencies and programs, because unlike in the private sector, government operates on what is called a baseline budget. And if you understand a baseline budget, every new budget cycle, they start at a baseline. They never cut spending. They only cut the increase of the rate of the spending. They never do as you have to do and go to a zero-based budget system.
Right.
We have to go to a zero-based budget system. Every program, every agency, every budget cycle needs to be validated. as far as being efficient and effective. And that's another place we can find the savings. However, also start looking at the means we can transition toward a consumption-based tax. Get that out there so that you can vote on that on a constitutional amendment, which normally comes in the same year after a legislative session.
We don't have the ability in Texas as citizens to gather up, create a law, gather signatures, and force it on the ballot for vote. We don't have that ability. We depend on our state legislators, our state reps, our state senators to force a voter referendum for something. And generally, when you see these, we just had 8 of them. We just had 8 of them on the ballot, right?
Yep.
When you read these things, right, I immediately say no, because it's not worded the way that I want it. It's not worded the way that we, the people, would word that once it starts going through the legislature, and there's a reason for that. That reason is all about their donors, their big corporate donors. That's the reason for that. Now, we might want to think about that in the future. You know, how do you feel about that? The ability for the people to get a bill on, to get a voter referendum out there.
Well, it's very interesting because you can have that happen at the local level, at the municipal level, but not at the state level.
Right.
And I think that's so important. You know, it's just the same as in Washington, D.C. The people that have the biggest amount of impact are the lobbying groups. And when you talk about the reason why we can't get the property tax reform is because the lobbyists for the independent school districts are the ones that are going up there and they're hammering to make sure that doesn't happen, which ties into another one of those legislative priorities that the Republican Party of Texas had, was to end the practice of taxpayer-funded lobbying. Because again, that's another example of that self-licking ice cream cone. And so we have got to make that happen, and you've got to have a stronger voice. So I would wholeheartedly believe that people need to be able to come together. Look, the whole Texas thing, right now people are going out and they're getting the ballot signatures to get that on, to be voted on in the Republican primary. But just to say, people need to be able to go out and understand, how do we get an issue on the petition, because that's what self-governance is all about. And right now we are, I hate to put it this way, we are censoring your voice to be a part of this system. And so therefore, we're only saying certain individuals can go and impact legislators. And as you just said, you follow the money. And so what people end up caring about, the legislation they're caring about, ties back to the people that are writing them the campaign check. The most important entity in a constitutional republic, which is what we live in, is the citizen, is the individual. And we have got to do what is right to give you the voice at the table.
Amen. That's exactly right. So taxpayer-funded lobbying has been something that BIZPAC's been working on at the Capitol for the last 2 sessions. And it's such an interesting thing when you talk to a state rep, talk to a state senator. You've never seen a more uncomfortable individual when you bring this up.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if you're not familiar right now, what happens is you have state agencies, state-funded entities that hire lobbyists paid for with your tax dollars to lobby to raise your taxes. Do you know that? That's what we're talking about getting rid of. Something about that seems immoral, doesn't it? It's like having an accountant that you know is robbing you blind, but not stopping them. It's just the same way. And they've got all the authority of the state behind them doing it. Okay, so this is the thing that we're trying to get handled up there. Now, special sessions. Right now, this year we just went through it. Governor Abbott called state of emergency during COVID 2019, 2020, 2021. State of emergency, but he didn't call the legislature. He didn't call our representatives. In Texas, you know, the representatives only go to the state house for 5 months unless there's a special session every 2 years. So the governor declares an emergency because of COVID, declares an emergency because of whatever, and there was no representation by your and my elected representative and senator to go work through it. So what did he do? Do you remember what he did?
Broke the law.
Mask orders, stay home, lockdown. He followed the entire Fauci agenda. Who suffered financially? If you're not raising your hand, you're not thinking. You know, I mean, all of us did. But the thing that's insane to me is that makes zero sense is how can we have an emergency situation with the brain trust of our elected officials that we've elected to represent us is not even consulted. What BIZPAC's agenda has been is automatic special session at declaration of emergency. What we kind of brokered out with the Lieutenant Governor and finally got Dan Patrick okay with was not maybe a full session to start out with, a special committee with the heads of all other committees. That would be what would happen first, and then if full body session legislative movement was needed, then they would call them in. And so that's kind of what we got to this session. I think that bill is going to be where it goes this next legislative cycle. So what are your thoughts on what BIZPAC wants to do in that area and our initiative in that area?
Well, it's very simple. My record would show that as chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, I brought before the State Republican Executive Committee a 9th legislative priority, and that was to curtail executive overreach going into the 87th legislative session. As the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, I enjoined a lawsuit against Governor Abbott because he unconstitutionally changed the election law. And when we went from 2 weeks of early voting to 3 weeks. And so you must understand that no elected official has the enumerated power to decide who or what is essential. The most essential thing in the United States of America and in Texas is your liberty. As a matter of fact, Benjamin Franklin said it very succinctly. Those who would surrender essential liberty for temporary security in the end will deserve neither liberty nor security. And that's exactly what we saw happen. The governor does not have the enumerated power to take $290 million and appropriate that money himself. That is supposed to go through the legislative process. That's why you have an appropriations committee. But yet that's what he did, and going out with a single source bid to an MTX corporation for contact tracing. So we've got to get the executive branch back into their lane, the legislative branch back doing what they're supposed to do, and the judicial branch, who believes that they can make law, which they cannot, back into their lane. And so I would definitely agree that we have got to get legislators doing what they're supposed to do, and no emergency should ever suspend your individual rights, freedoms, and liberties, which are guaranteed you in the Constitution. However, too many people now believe that a mandate, an edict, an order, and a decree equal law. And so I think one of the most important things is that we, the people, need to go back and study Civics 101.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. Flying, I don't know if any of you have flown recently. I had the displeasure of flying commercial after getting spoiled for a while, but on private. But I flew commercial, and it must have been 30 or 40 times on the flight from here to Denver and Denver to Cody, Wyoming. They announced repeatedly the federal law mask mandate. Well, so I use my air miles. I buy the internet, right, on the phone, and I look up and I find the executive order Biden signed on his second day in office. There's no federal law. Congress has never voted on this. This is a Biden executive order, and that you're getting this mantra out of corporate America. Don't fall for it. Be smarter than that. And you got to be smarter than the devil to beat the devil. You got to know what they're doing and watch your signals. So we'll skip on down here to energy independence. Now this is the first. Anybody that knows me knows we're going to argue. Okay, I love a good fight. Our first meeting with Lieutenant Colonel West, I'm so surprised that he even accepted my invite because we had just found out the level of corruption up at the State House on the entire ERCOT energy fiasco. And we had just mapped out the money trail on the deal and found out that our current governor was fully informed a week before the winter storm with the prediction of the storm hitting.
And he got an award from a wind energy
Yeah,
pack.
he'd just gotten an award about how green and pretty he is. And what he did is he allowed the electric producers to sell our electricity that we produce here in Texas across state lines while they browned us and blacked us out. That's what he did.
And in New Mexico.
Yeah, because what happens is Texas produces enough electricity for 8 other states. My father's company built about half the power plants here and most of the grid. I mean, that was just one of our family businesses. So we know what infrastructure we've got in this state. But when you sell a kilowatt hour across the state lines, you can sell it for a nickel more. I want you to think about what I'm saying. And they sell it in the terawatts across state lines, okay? So all of these blackouts, burst pipes, water mains, 66 people froze to death, businesses and homes had all this damage. He was warned in advance. He let it happen. Now go track his donations. 23% of his donations suddenly showed up out of big energy. And it was nothing to them for what they made, okay? So what BIZPAC, once we figured all of this out, did all this backtracking on it and mapped it, we don't want any loyalty to ERCOT. We want total Texas energy independence, Texans first. You and I bear the burden. You and I bear the burden for all of this energy, all these refineries. We bear the burden for all of the traffic on all the roads, right? Why are we not being served first? We come here, we pay taxes, we work. Why are we not being served first and foremost, and then we sell the overages? What that would do is create what? The number one thing, competition. Right, where electric providers are competing on good service, right, to sell out of state, right? Instead of by mandate. When they do it by mandate, you and I get screwed, and that's what happened. So Texas energy independence and removal from ERCOT. We don't want, and we've talked about this 100 different times, we don't want an ERCOT board member to be fired. We want to be done with them. We want Texas energy independence. How do you feel about that, Colonel West?
Well, I think you just told me how you feel about it. You know, this is one of the things I want you to understand is that just up the road in Conroe, Texas, I want you to think about this. An 11-year-old boy froze to death in his home.
Yeah.
Just up the road in Conroe, Texas. Can you imagine being a mother that is putting blanket upon blanket upon blanket on your child? And then you go in and see your child is frozen to death. Can you imagine being the father trying to console your wife who did everything she possibly could, and you were completely unable to do anything to protect your own son in your home? But yet we had a company that made $2.3 billion during that freeze. That's what Joe was talking about.
Yeah.
And one of these companies wrote $1 million check to the governor. But yet an 11-year-old boy up the road in Conroe, Texas, had frozen to death. I could not sleep at that if I were in that position. So I think that without a doubt, we have to go back and look at why did we establish ERCOT in the first place? Because it's like everything in government. There may be a good intention at the beginning, but over the course and period of time, it gets more and more perverted. First and foremost, we cannot depend a 23 to 25% energy reliability in our distribution system to an unreliable source, which is wind and solar. Mostly, when you go and you study, wind and solar can operate 3 to 6%. So we've got to reduce that. We've got to go back and making sure that we can have the different redundant systems, such as going back to 3 coal-fired plants that we closed down, maybe bring them back. Look at how we can expand the nuclear. But also, we need to make sure that we hold the feet to the fire of the natural gas providers that, for whatever reason, said they're not going to winterize. Because in the military, when you're getting ready to go into a winter, in the fall, you start looking at your generators, your vehicles, to winterize them. But there's no system of checks and balances, and again, they're paying, saying no. So I will tell you that what I will promise you is that we go back and look at the original intent of ERCOT, and where ERCOT has gotten off a path, then we will get it back to the original intent. If it means that we have to get rid of ERCOT to make sure that we truly do have an independent Texas system, we will do that. But I will promise you that we will never sell energy outside the state of Texas until we know that every single person here in the state of Texas, and not Mexico, are being serviced properly.
Texas first.
Yes, sir.
Texas first, Texans first. So the way that the spin masters in the media, the leftists, the way that they spin that whole thing is they say that somebody was energy economically disadvantaged, and we should subsidize. Do you hear this? That's tax dollars go to pay for electricity. Well, that's not going to solve the problem we just talked about. But this is how the media's tried to spin this. Is they've tried to spin this as there were people that were energy economically disadvantaged. Look for these trigger words. Be able to spot this. You know. So we've got casino gambling has been something that some of us have experience with, and you go out of state to get it. We have 2 casinos in Texas. Did y'all know that? Yeah, we've got East Texas and we got one down there in Eagle Pass. They're nothing like Vegas. They're not. They're more like Montana, you know. But the point is, all of this casino gambling that happens by Texans, and I know very few that don't visit casinos and or visit Vegas or the Golden Nugget or whatever. I know very few that don't. All of it goes out of state, even the cruise ships. Texas gets very little revenue from the gambling cruise ships. The state of Texas is losing big time on this casino gambling thing. And it goes to Louisiana, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and it goes on the cruise ships and it goes to Vegas. For the most part, we're fools to keep hemorrhaging this cash. We've got things that we want to pay for in this state. There are big casinos lobbying right now, very quietly lobbying around the state to try to build big mega casino resort and convention center complexes. And so, you know, we'd like to kind of find out where you are on expansion of casino gambling licenses in Texas.
My concern is this: until we resolve the issue with the cartels, their influence in Texas, especially the human and sex trafficking, I am not ready for us to step up and do this, because that will become another turf war that the cartels will look to try to overtake. Because right now in the state of Texas, I don't know if you all have been tracking this, but we have these illegal gaming houses across the state of Texas. And guess who's in control of these illegal gaming houses? And what do you find in these illegal gaming houses? So I do not want to see us give a leg up to the cartels. Remember, these guys, and again, they are transnational narco-criminal terrorist organizations. They're firing across the border into the state of Texas. This is an act of war that we're fighting. They're making $25 to $30 million a week just on human trafficking. We're not talking about the drug trafficking and sex trafficking. So I do not want to give them a fertile ground that they can look at expanding into. And I will tell you that check out this documentary that just came out recently. It's called Cartelville, USA. And what the cartels have done is they have taken advantage of the quote-unquote legalized marijuana system out there in the state of California.
Yeah.
And so even though you're saying that marijuana is legalized in California, there's still a lot of restrictions and things of that nature. So the cartels have come in and they've found areas where they're trafficking people in to work and create their own marijuana plants. And guess what? No one's bothering them. So until we get this situation under control with our porous border, I don't think that we need to put a hold on this whole thing with casino gambling.
I see. That's a good point. The human trafficking element, the cartels, with the defunding of the police and the totally morally bankrupt court systems with our judges that have been ushered in under the Beto landslide.
Yep.
They had that's not going to work, because
No.
you're decriminalizing crime constantly.
And remember, the mafia was behind the creation of a lot of these casinos. When you look out there in Las Vegas. So we don't want to create that situation here in the state of Texas.
Yeah, I do see that. That's a good point. So one of the things that we were trying to get done, I mentioned it earlier, we were trying to eliminate any kind of mask, vaccine, or lockdown mandate. Couldn't get the legislators to do it. Finally got them to confess they were under pressure from Abbott not to. Steve Toth went ahead and filed the law anyway, and there were a couple of others that did, and they saw retribution for it. But tell us where you're at on that.
Well, I'm not a vindictive person. The most important thing is your individual liberties and freedoms. I mean, that's why I took an oath to the Constitution. And about a month ago, my wife and I, we had a little fight with Mr. Wuhan coronavirus. And the thing is, when you're married to a woman that has a PhD, And she says, this is what I'm going to do. And she starts to use those multi-syllabic words. I was just a paratrooper. I just say, yes, dear, whatever you want to do. And so my wife decided to get a COVID shot, a pneumonia shot, and a flu shot all at the same time. So 2 days later, she's flat on her back.
Yeah.
2 days after that, I'm messed up.
Yeah.
But the thing is that we looked up and saw all of these other different therapies, treatments, and protocols. So what we did, we got the monoclonal antibody therapy treatment, and she was released to go back home. I had some pneumonia traces in my lungs, so I was admitted to the hospital. And I got on the phone and called some of these frontline doctors that we have here in the state of Texas, and I said, what should I be looking out for? What should I make sure I'm not told to do? They say remdesivir, tell them no. And so as soon as I get to Medical City, Plano, doctor comes in, we're going to put you on remdesivir. I said, that dog don't hunt, doc. And let me tell you what I want. I want budesonide nebulizer treatment, because that's what I was told. In 48 hours, I was done. And so what I think that we need to do is start talking about the things that you can select, because God made us all different. And when we start telling people that you must get this certain thing, if you lose control of your body, what do you have control over? So once again, and think about this, there was a debacle going on in Afghanistan when all of a sudden President Biden steps up to the microphone and decides, we're going to force everyone to get a shot. This was all about shifting a narrative. That's up your microphone. I look in the Constitution, I don't see anywhere where it says the government has an enumerated power to protect my health. Sir, that's my responsibility, my health and wellness, what you just talked about. And I should be able to make those decisions myself. They're supposed to protect my rights, my freedoms, and my liberties. Medical freedom is so important. And this is a huge issue that we've got to stand up against. And so I will not allow that to happen here in the state of Texas.
Thank you. Good. That's what we want. We're going to open the floor for questions. I have one more question, one more issue to discuss. I'll frame it for you and we'll talk about it. But then think about any questions. We've got a little time here. It's rare that we have time, but I started early on purpose. Okay, so we would have time.
Early is on time. On time is late.
Yes.
Late don't come.
Amen. There we go. There we go. So
I'm just saying, if you were a lieutenant and you had walked in, I mean, it would have been some push-ups there, Doc.
So let me get this. Okay.
There you know. Am I right? Army strong.
All right. So this is the last question I have prepared, and then we'll move on to questions around the room. So there's a lot of different. We were just touching on medical freedom.
Yeah.
Okay. We were just talking about that. There's a lot more than that. There's a lot of technologies out there that our government's worked on and perfected over years that kill pathogens. They flat out kill pathogens. Ozone's one of them. Except it's terrible for your lungs. Ozone is the ozone, the O3 chain burns your alveoli in your lungs, rupturing the small alveoli cell that does the oxygen carbon dioxide transfer. So that's what happened though during the lockdowns. Is all these forbidding ozone type laws that were out there were just forsaken entirely under the emergency order. Did you know that? Go to the state capitol.
I do now.
Go to the state capitol. That when you walk in the state capitol and it smells like you're licking a battery, a transistor battery. Everybody did that as a kid, probably. But don't worry, we'll do that later today. But anyway, when you walk in the state capitol and a lot of other buildings in the state, it's full of ozone, right? And they couldn't get them to stop it, even though there were newer technologies out there. It's like people lose their minds for fear of a pandemic and an emergency, and they won't follow the real science.
Yeah.
You know. So what I wanted to pitch is, lay that groundwork, lay that out there, and how do we prevent the insanity that people have during the pandemic, where they set aside good, solid reason, right? Because your own lungs produce H2O2.
Yep.
Your thymus and your liver produce H2O. It's part of your own first line of defense as a human.
Okay,
Every
stop,
mammal
stop.
does.
Stop.
Yeah.
All right.
So why
Can
put
I answer?
aside good sound logic?
Well, this is the thing you have to understand, that what we just experienced was the least most dangerous pandemic that the world has ever
Right.
known. Okay, you're talking about 99.98% recovery rate.
right.
But this ended up being about power and control. As a matter of fact, remember what Rahm Emanuel said when he was the chief of staff of Barack Obama: never let a good crisis go to waste.
Right.
And that's exactly why they're going to continue to try to perpetuate this. Now you have to have 3 booster shots. Maybe it'll go up to 4 booster shots after the original shot, because they have to keep you in this sense of perpetual fear. And no one is talking about the natural immunities. No one is talking about, like I said, the other protocols, treatments, and therapies out there, because they want to guide you to one thing. I mean, you look at the money that Pfizer is making per day, $411 million. And so not only do they have the shot, they have everything as far as the anecdote if something goes wrong with the shot. So they're cornering a market here. And so what I think that the purpose of government is to do is to provide you the information, to provide you the ability to make the best possible decision for yourself. Why did we get to this point? I've been in combat. I've been in firefights. And let me tell you something. No one follows a frantic Fanny into a firefight. But what I saw that happened here in the state of Texas and everyone else is folks just lost their mind. And they did not sit back and objectively look at what is happening and then come out with the right solutions that people can make a decision for themselves. That's what leadership is. Right. Leadership is not about fear. As a matter of fact, it was Winston Churchill who said, fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision. And that's why you all need to come to understand, what is leadership really about? The first thing about leadership is courage. To stand up and not say, I'm going to follow what everyone else is doing, but to say that I'm going to objectively look at this situation. I'm going to call in the right people. I'm going to understand enough about this situation, say to go out and find me the solutions that I can give to people, because I am not going to violate people's liberty. I'm not going to tell healthy people that they have to stay at home. I don't have the power to tell a business that you're not essential. Everybody here that owns a business, your business is essential to them. And I don't have the right to make the decision to say it's not. And so that's what we have to start doing. We, the people, have to start looking for the right type of folks that will protect and safeguard your liberties. One of the things that we fight for, and I'm sure Doctor understands, is that the VA won't allow our men and women who have suffered PTSD, traumatic brain injury, some of the other things, to get hyperbaric treatments. And it's been proven that hyperbaric treatments work very well. And not just for that, for some other things. Why? Because people just want to have that power control and not give you the ability to go out and make a decision about what is best for you. So that's always the perspective that I'm going to look at, is that how do I make sure that I protect your liberty and freedom? That I don't freak out and then start making the decision that affects you, your lives, and your livelihoods. You think about the suicides that we've seen. You think about the loss of businesses that we've seen. You think about the domestic abuse, the child abuse that we've seen because people reacted, which is fear,
Right.
instead of making a strong decision based upon science and consulting with the right people that were not the folks that were looking at how they can make, a buck out of this. There's a huge conflict of interest going on. I will tell you that one of the things that I promise, Texas Medical Board, Texas Nursing Board, Texas Pharmacy Board, we're going to clean house. Because those people are bureaucrats and they do not have the right to get in between the patient and doctor relationship to start saying, you can't have this, you can't request this. There's a sheriff deputy right now up in Fort Worth that is dying. And his wife has asked for these things to be given to him and for a doctor to come in and prescribe them, and the hospital is saying no. You can imagine how frustrating that is?
Yeah.
But yet we got a governor that's not doing anything about that.
That's exactly right.
I will not allow that to happen.
That's great. That's great. That's great. Yeah, a dovetail onto that point is there are a lot of people in the room here that are either angel investors or equity owners, and in and around the business of cannabis medical research, CBD and THC derived compounds that replace opioids, that do genetic therapy, and like Dr. Jackson, he can repair genetic tissue with it. But where are you at on that subject for the opening all that the way up?
I fully support CBD. But let me tell you, I don't want to see us all of a sudden come out and say we're going to legalize the THC. in the marijuana. I think we go down a very dangerous path when we do that.
Well, not for recreational. We're talking about medical.
If you have a controlled ability to make sure, I have no problems with that.
Okay.
But we don't want to see that recreational use that is out there, and that's where I would draw a line. Because having served in the military, if you're going to sit down and you want to go and talk to a recruiter's still going to ask you, have you been under the influence of THC? If you want to go out on a 4473 form to purchase a firearm, guess what that form asks you? Are you under the influence of THC? And so we have to still understand that there are some restrictions there. But if we can have a control mechanism by way we make sure that this is not harming a person over the long term, I don't have any issue with that.
Got it.
Farming here,
Farming it,
farming it.
I got some big concerns because the next thing you know, who comes in there and starts late at night whacking your weeds? And again, go see this documentary, Cartelville, USA, because that's what they've done. They've come in and they've created their own marijuana farms out there in the state of California. And guess what? No one's bothering them.
Colonel West, I just want to commend you on that. That's one of the reasons why I got with BIZPAC. We want to bring in where we can truly see for all the patients how these drugs are. Because in some cases, THC may work well for a day, but we want to know the evidence.
Yeah. Right.
And that's one of the reasons wellness, I work with WBRX. These guys are.
These are the doctors that the state of Texas are going to line up behind to map the way forward for medical cannabis, for real medical grade cannabis. These are the doctors. And look what's happening. It's happening.
And see, one of the things I want to bring attention to, because, I served as a member of Congress out of South Florida. We had a huge issue with the opioids down in South Florida.
Yeah.
Something that started out as a good thing, but then all of a sudden you have some bad doctors out there that realized that they could turn into a profit.
Right.
It became a bad thing.
Right.
And South Florida became the distribution center for opioids going all across the United States of America. One of the largest opioid busts in the history of the United States of America was out of South Florida.
Right.
So that's why I want to make sure we have those control mechanisms in place so that we don't go down the same path that we saw with the opioid crisis.
That's exactly right. So with that, Bruce, you have a question?
I sure do.
Okay.
Thank you very much for all your wonderful comments. As I did the research for my soon-to-be published game, Zap Them Rats, I became very familiar with the gun laws that are being promoted, none less than 7 by Sheila Jackson Lee.
Oh, yeah.
As governor, what can you do about ensuring that our guns are going to be safe?
Well,
Because those Democrats want them.
oh, well, of course, it's not just they want the guns, it's the entire industry. And so last week up in Buda, I sat down with some members of the gun industry, being it trainers, being it manufacturers, being gun store owners. And I told them one of the things we have to do is look at the Texas Gun Industry Association, because no one is lobbying for the gun industry. And so what the left is doing is not just going after the gun, the financial institutions that won't work with them. PayPal, they're saying, we're not going to take, the credit card swiping. The insurance companies that are killing them. And so we need to start looking at how we can protect the gun industry and the manufacturers. Just making of the brass, the gunpowder, the primers, all of these type of things. So I'd like to see Texas be the center of the gun manufacturing and gun industry in the United States of America and the world, and we protect them first and foremost. Again, let me tell you 2 things about American history and Texas history. Our founding fathers and the people here in Texas, when they helped us to establish Texas, understood if you're armed, you're a citizen. If you're disarmed, you're a subject. And why is that? April the 17th of 1775, April 19th of 1775. When the British landed in Boston Harbor, they were marching inland toward Concord, Massachusetts. And why were they going to Concord, Massachusetts? It was to destroy a weapons and armaments factory that was supplying the Sons of Liberty. That's why you have a Second Amendment after the First Amendment. And on October the 2nd of 1835, when the Mexican cavalry showed up at a little town called Gonzales, they asked for what back? A cannon that the people there, the Texans, were using to protect themselves against the Comanche Raiders. And what did they say? Come and take it. The ability to defend yourself is so important. And we just saw what happened with that case in Wisconsin. The left would not have cared one bit if Kyle Rittenhouse had been beaten to death or shot. And think about this, one of the people that had a gun was a convicted felon.
That's right.
So how does a convicted felon have a gun, but yet the left does not want to talk about that? So that's why we have to protect it.
That's right, that's right. So to add on to that, a couple of points here in Texas. A lot of people don't know the NRA is relocated to Texas. Their law firm lobbyist is the Brewer Law Firm out of Dallas, $86 million a year. And so this is happening. What you're saying is happening. Now, all of those things are a little cringeworthy, you know, because it's such big dollars. I get it.
I'm a former board member of the National Rifle Association. The reason why I tendered my resignation to the NRA in August is there was a lot of corruption, cronyism involved with the NRA, and I'm very concerned about the future of that organization, which is the nation's oldest civil rights organization. I've seen Gun Owners of America and also the National Association for Gun Rights step up. The NRA should have never decided that they were 501c3, that they would get involved in the insurance side of the house. And when they got involved in the insurance side of the house and they're chartered in the state of New York, they didn't cross all the T's and dot all the I's, and that's why they're coming after the NRA. They should have long since ago moved to the state of Texas or somewhere out of New York, but I'm very concerned about what's going on with the NRA because Letitia James has her sights on the NRA, and there's some corruption that if they don't correct it, they're going to be in trouble.
I appreciate that. Ken?
Yeah, I have a question. It was number one on the list about election integrity. When Georgia passed its election integrity law, Major League Baseball attempted to extort Georgia by moving the All-Star.
And I'm from Atlanta.
Okay. And so.
Oh, man. I had
7-0, baby, 7-0. All right,
I paid $1,700 to listen to that at the game.
So my question is, is there anything a state can do, in a state legislature, to dissuade companies from trying to extort state action by withdrawing business from that state, as Major League Baseball did, and as several other states have done? And it was direct attack on the election integrity law that Georgia.
No, I think one of the things that you have to do, without a doubt, is, you know, the Texas Enterprise Fund, I don't believe in that. A governor should not have a slush fund, which is really promoting crony capitalism to give to certain corporations and businesses to attract them to come here. If you want to come here to Texas, you should want to come here because of our principles, our values, our policies that enable businesses to grow. And so I think it's a real eye-opener for red states to now realize they should not be going out there and asking for a lot of these organizations to come and be there in their respective states, because that's how we end up losing those states. And think about the fact that a lot of small businesses were hurt because of what they did with the All-Star game. Minority businesses, and then they pick it up and they move it to Denver, Colorado, which is like 99.9% white. And I think that's something that should be brought out. So I think that it's very important. And understand with the men and boys sports item here in the state of Texas, we only took it up to the 12th grade.
Right.
We didn't take it all the way up to the collegiate level. Why? Because the NCAA started making the threats against the state of Texas. So I think it's important that we say, you stay in your lane and you be focused on, you know, managing sports, because what they said is that we will remove any type of championship or whatever out of the state of Texas. And so we've got to let them know that we're not going to tolerate those type of things. So there are things that we can do as far as, you know, tax abatements and what have you, but we just got to let them know that you are not going to be in the state of Texas and censor people. We're not going to have this fascist activity like we see happening, kicking people off of platforms. If you violate the Constitution of the state of Texas, there should be some type of fine. And Ron DeSantis has done that in the state of Florida. You get a $5,000 fine if you do some of these things. And you can have class action lawsuits. So people should be able to have class action lawsuits. And so wouldn't it be great if all those small business owners that lost, you know, the ability to have business during the All-Star game, come together, class action lawsuit against the Major League Baseball. But guess what? We're happy because we had the National League Championship Series and the World Series, so we're more than made up for it. So that's kind of like, karma, you know? But you're absolutely right. We have to empower citizens and small business owners to be able to stand up against that. Just the same with this medical freedom issue also.
That's a good point. Yes, sir, Mr. Kim.
Good afternoon, Lieutenant Colonel West. Thank you so much for coming. JL, thanks for hosting as well. And then especially everybody that is attending here. I am so thankful and grateful you're here because part of the problem I think that we're having in society, we've gotten to this point because people are getting too complacent. But anyways, my main question is, Lieutenant Colonel West, so I've heard some rumors swiveling around from the RPT. So after your tenure there, what was the state of that group in regards, and especially considering the financial status of the RPT after you had left that?
The financial
These are rumors
status
that I've been hearing, so I just want to get those cleared out with you.
Well, it's kind of funny that, it's hard to respond to rumors because the person that came in as the chairman, Matt Rinaldi, afterwards has never said anything about that. So I think that their financial standing was good, and I think they had 2 months of cash reserves upon my leaving. And I would just say the next time you have someone that says, this rumor, ask them did they ever write a check to the RPT while I was there?
Oh, that's a good point.
That's a good response. Yeah, I didn't believe it, but I just wanted to get that cleared out, and it's better to do it directly with you.
Absolutely.
It's the best way
Good
to
point. Sure. Yes, sir.
So I agree with you on the narco-terrorist at that level.
And you can do it by executive order.
Okay, so I thought of obviously at the federal level, legislative ideas, but what can, even if they're harboring terrorists, because that's what they are, sanctioning the state, or the countries like Mexico, but what can the state level do? I like maybe trade or commerce or something.
Well, the thing is that if you designate the cartels as a transnational narco-criminal terrorist organization, that enables you in the state of Texas to go after financial institutions that are doing business with them. You can freeze assets and seize assets. That's how we defeated the Colombian cartels and everyone down in South Florida. We declared them as such and went after those assets. The other thing is that we should not have these stash houses. So you find who are the real estate agencies that are selling folks these stash houses and go after their assets. If you are aiding and abetting terrorism, by way of these cartels, then that becomes a state felony. Like these non-governmental organizations that are out there, basically, they are becoming the enablers for human trafficking. Because the Border Patrol is not processing anyone that's coming across the border illegally. They're taking them and turning them over to Catholic Charity and some of these others who are getting federal grant money, and they're giving them bus tickets, plane tickets, $1,300 of taxpayer money, and they're taking off. So those are the ways that you can start to go after the system of illegal immigration here in the state of Texas, which is something that, by the Texas State Constitution, we're able to do.
Yeah. So is that like at a country level too, like sanctioning Mexico perhaps, or
No, I mean that's the federal government's thing. But what I want to do,
that's what I thought. So I was trying to separate.
No, what and again, the federal government in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution is the guarantee clause. They're supposed to provide two things to every state in the union. You know this: a Republican form of government and protect every state in the union from invasion. They're not doing it. They're failing in their constitutional duty and responsibility, but yet Article 1, Section 10, Clause number 3 of the Constitution says this is what states can do. And I will tell you, we should not have this situation. If you are not doing your constitutional duty, then we have to step up as a sovereign state to provide the safety and security for our people. And that's the forthright nature that you have to have. And you've got to go after the number one thing for the cartels, it's the money.
And I agree with you on the manufacturing of any ammunition or firearms.
Needs to be here.
Because Operation Chokehold, as you know, just choked the financial institutions.
Absolutely. Eric Holder.
We should actually have entities or financial institution at maybe a regional level, which is Texas, to actually start funding them and start attracting them.
And see, that's one of the things that I think the BIZPAC can look into is how can we get the angel investors, how can we get venture capitalists, private equity to, establish a financial institution, establish an insurance agency that will protect gun manufacturers. And then therefore you go out and say, you're getting screwed in Connecticut or wherever, come to Texas. Because we have a bank that'll work with you, we have financial institutions that will back your credit card purchases and things of this nature.
You want to talk about that?
Well, we have several arms manufacturers and armatures that are members of BIZPAC.
Oh, sure.
And so they're. I'm gonna thank you. I wanted to honk that horn. Adam.
Question for both of y'all. When you said you talked to a lot of the people in the legislature and the governor told them to back down and why are we still supporting people that back down?
Exactly.
Why are we not priming
Exactly.
all the small arms
Exactly.
staying and getting them out? And then if you were the governor, how are you going to help us do that? Because we've got a lot of people who have a lot of money and those resources that come in from the state supporting the incumbency rather than people who believe in the Republican cause.
Well, I will tell you first and foremost that you can have all the money in your world. Money doesn't buy you a vote.
I get
Okay,
that.
and so each and every person needs to understand the power that they have in the vote. And you just go and look at the voting records. If the people that are up there as R's are not reflecting the principles and values of legislative priorities, then they should not be there. I mean, when I see folks that, have 39% Republican or conservative, ratings, fiscal index ratings, they shouldn't be there. One of the things that I did as the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, when a certain person came in as Speaker of the House, Dave Phelan, and he decided he was going to work with Democrats and give them chairmanship positions in the Texas State House.
Look how that worked out.
I call him a political traitor. Everyone had a what. But that's the whole point of it. Think about it. Those are the exact same 15 individuals that got on private jets and left the state of Texas, yet they still have their committee chairmanship positions. Why? Do you think that if Democrats are in electoral power and position, they're going to power share with Republicans? Absolutely not. And so I don't understand why we continue to have this mentality that if we just are nice to them, it's really a Stockholm syndrome. If we're nice to them, they'll like us and we'll be able to get along. No, they have a killer instinct that we do not have. And so we have got to make sure that we get rid of the people that don't have that instinct to say that we won. Here are the policies we're going to push through. You never hear the left going out there and saying what's happening in California is bad.
Never.
But yet, if you have constitutional conservative principle of violence, it's bad. Like I said, last night, 60 Minutes is highlighting Austin, Texas, and they're defunding the police, saying that this is a model for reimagining police all across the United States of America. This is insidious.
Propaganda.
In the capital of Texas.
Propaganda.
They didn't mention the homicide record and how high.
They didn't mention the homicide record, any of that stuff. And the other thing they talked about the Army sergeant that shot the BLM protester, but they didn't give people the full story about the BLM protester had done a video prior to this little, unlicensed gathering that they had and said how he was going to go and punk somebody out with his AK-47. Right. And the BLM protester went up to the car of this Army sergeant who was stationed at Fort Hood and pointed his AK-47. Well, let me tell you something. As an old soldier, Doc, you point an AK-47 at me, bam. I'm laying you out.
Yeah.
But they did not say that. They did not say that in that segment. And so that disinformation, that misinformation is already happening here in the state of Texas. We don't need to power share with these progressive socialists.
I agree with that.
That's my concern. The media. They get away with it. It's propaganda, it's not journalism.
Well, they get away with it because we have people that allow them to get away with it. We have got to start understanding what they're saying, understanding what they're doing. We've got to go on their platforms. We've got to challenge them.
So as governor, if somebody puts a camera in my face and a microphone in my face, can I assume that's an AK-47? Asking for a friend.
We're being recorded here.
I went to college with this guy.
It's very interesting. Hey, sir, it's very interesting that you say that because remember Massoud, who was the head of the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan? Right. How did they assassinate him?
Camera crew.
A camera crew. And so, if someone is sneaking in and they got a little, thing inside that camera, then absolutely right. But you got to have respect for the freedom of the press, but we also have to hold the press accountable because they're not supposed to be an ideological press. And that's what we have in the United States. Think about the gentleman that just ran his car, his SUV, through the people up in Waukesha.
Right.
Have y'all seen the background of that individual?
No. Yeah.
Read the background of that individual. A felon who, a few months ago posted on a website, he's a BLM member, that let's get in cars and let's run them over. So how many of those news media outlets are going to report accurately who he was? But yet...
They've started the narrative on the way over here today that he was fleeing another crime that he had
Yeah.
committed and trying to get away from the police.
Really?
Oh, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Oh, my gosh.
That's the new narrative.
yeah, that makes it even better, right?
Constant spin, constant cover story. That's it.
Angela had a.
Angela, box?
Well, I like what you said about really sticking it to the left, and what I think is refreshing, I think everyone in this room, we need that from our leaders, who are going to say, no, we're not giving you committee positions, and what can the governor do? Because I think Abbott's been a disaster, obviously. What can the governor do to work with a Phelan type to either oust him or to say, you will not do this?
Well, but see, you're making the assumption that the governor is not approving what Phelan is doing.
Right.
Okay, I mean, they're in the same camp. Now, I will tell you that if you look at the Texas State Constitution, think about what's happening here in Harris County, where you're right, you go back to 2018, we had the whitewash of judicial positions in Dallas County here, and now you got these progressive socialist judicial activists that are releasing violent criminals. Well, guess what the governor can do? The governor can initiate impeachment procedures against these judges.
Exactly.
Excellent. And he's not.
Well, but he hasn't. But he hasn't. And we have a judicial review committee. I know most of them. I've turned things over to them, and it keeps getting stuck at the governor's office because eventually he appoints the judicial review committee. The governor does. And so they're making the reports on all of these things. There's been a dozen of them that we've been involved in through our friends, through members. And the governor does nothing about it. There's only one judge that I know of that is getting some type of reprimand for releasing a violent criminal 3 times in 72 hours. There's only one. So you're absolutely right. You know, that's how we get there. Let's take one more question because we're out of time.
Thank you. Can we apply that principle to the media? Can we reset a formation for Texas that states these are our new policies, this is what the media will go by, so it's more unbiased?
Yeah, but see, the danger of that is that you're asking me to be a dictator. The media still has a First Amendment right, and so.
Setting new rules because of the rules that they go by.
Yeah, but see, I cannot set rules. If I'm going to be a true governor, I have to govern. I cannot be a dictator. Yeah, I mean, but the thing is that you need to hold them to a standard, the standard of truth. And the bottom line is that what I can do as a governor, I can expose that. I can go on these outlets and call them out for what they're doing, like I've done with the Texas Tribune and some others. But what you have to do is understand that every single one of you, you're a media source. Every single one of you has an iPad, iPhone, you know, maybe many of them, take a dot. And you need to be able to proliferate truth. And I'll close on this. Find 5 people that don't think and believe as you do, and get 3. Find 5 people that don't think and believe as you do, and get 3. 3 out of 5 is 60%. 60% is a landslide in a political race. And I guarantee you, there are 3 out of 5 people that saying, I'm paying too much for gas, the commodity prices are killing me, I don't like the fact that I'm not safe and secure. But if they don't hear that message, and especially business owners, when I sat on the Small Business Committee in the House of Representatives, I would always tell business owners, when was the last time you sat down with your employees and told them about, you know, Obamacare, all these policies, and how it affects you and the decisions that you have to make? When I was a commander in the military of 600 troops, I didn't sit back in the office and never talk to my soldiers. Because the soldiers need to understand the decisions that you have to make as a commander. Or else they just think that you're just doing stuff because you're just mean. Okay? And that's exactly what has happened. So I want you to get outside of your comfort box. I want you to get out there and talk to the people that don't believe you. The problem with the left is that they operate in an echo chamber. We cannot be the ones that also operate in an echo chamber. Because when we get our message out, we win people over. Now, why did you say 3 out of 5? Because 2 of those people are stuck on stupid. You're not going to get them, okay? So I'm giving you that. But 3 out of 5.
We know them.
3 out of 5 you can get. So again, thank you, John.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, would you stick around for a few photographs? Get a picture while you can. Come over and talk to him in person.